Hey everybody, Jim Kerr here. Uh, I am so psyched to have this guest on the Indispensable Conversation. His name is Brant Cooper. He's a New York Times best-selling author. He just wrote another book called Disruption Proof, which I absolutely love. In fact, I recommended it in a post recently. He has a really interesting perspective about leadership mindset, which I can't wait to help him unveil it to our audience here today. Um, Brant, thanks for coming on. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jim. I look forward to the conversation, man.
Yeah, cheers.
Hey, cheers.
We
Cheers.
got to enjoy this coffee. Um, I'm going to jump right into our question, okay? And it's
Yeah.
this: has the time come for us all to quiet our egos?
Short answer, yes. Uh, ego provides us a lot of benefit. We can demonstrate our ego, sort of in business as leaders, ego's fine. But I think that, boy, just looking at the world, mass resignations and the labor supply and all of these things going on, I think we need to learn when to step back. And I think that if we're listen, there's a lot of leaders that are talking about this sort of thing, developing empathy, listening better, showing vulnerability, empowering others, and all of those type of things. And so I think that's all great. And I agree with all of them. Uh, I think the difficult part when trying to apply that really has to do with what we view about ourselves and our roles and what we should be doing, and I think that that's really where the ego comes in, and so I think it's hard to figure out when when we should be stepping back a little bit.
Yeah, the thing with ego is it's all about sort of self-validation, right? We're looking for approval. We're seeking to understand, that we're right, quote unquote. There's that
Right.
kind of stuff drives that ego behavior, and it makes it difficult sometimes for a person who's got a big ego to admit when they're wrong and to show that vulnerability, like you say, and be able to ask for help when they need it and that kind of thing. And I think what I'm seeing with folks that are struggling with this right now, and maybe it's exasperated by the pandemic, I'm sure that it is, but they're seeking like self-aggrandizement. Spend a minute on LinkedIn and look at all the great posts that people. Oh, look at me, and they're trying to get through the noise, I suppose. But it's also like an ego-driven behavior.
Yeah, I think well, I mean, let's look at how people became successful. And I remember way back in college, where everybody said, like, you need to specialize in one thing and become an expert at it. And then when you get into the workforce, everybody says, listen, you got to be the best in it. You have to be indispensable in what you do. And of course, if you become indispensable, you also don't get promoted because they don't want to take you out of what you're doing. So like, we learn all of these myths as we advance in life, and so now we get to the point that we're actually leaders, and you got that way because of your expertise and your knowledge and your ability to execute. And so it's sort of reasonable to assume that that's what you should continue doing, but but circumstances change, the world changes, and maybe that's not the best way to move forward. And so I think, specifically around things like the pandemic, there's
Yeah.
so much uncertainty.
Mm,
And if you just lead as you've always led and you're in execution mode only, that
hmm.
actually is going to lead to failure
Yeah.
because the world's changed. And so if you do
Right.
things the way you did it yesterday and you lead your
Right.
team or your squad the way you did yesterday, you're actually leading them into failure.
Probably, right? I mean,
Right.
I I I I don't know. I mean, have you ever worked for a narcissist? Here's a question for you. And I'll share a story I have. So I'll let you go first. But
Yeah,
man, it
I
is tough.
I don't think I actually have worked for one, but I have been around them, and it's very difficult, very difficult. Tell me your story, though.
Yeah. Well, I had a client, you know, great little business potential, but the guy basically blew it because his ego got in the way. He couldn't take advice. He he sort of went from one extreme to another. So we'd either listen to all these great stories of all the wonderful successes he's had and all the businesses he's built and all the money he's got and all that kind of stuff. And then that would lead back to another weird behavior, which was really sort of the childlike outbursts whenever you challenged them or offered that maybe there was a better way to do things. And as a consequence, the business suffered,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know?
Well, so there's a case study in the book actually where a leader, and it's a story about this leader, but he sort of stood up and he was like, "Why can't I tell my people to be agile and they just go be agile?" And it was really a mystery to him. And working with him and over time, he was able to discover actually how you successfully delegate authority and because he really wanted to, because he realized that's how you were going to grow. That's
Sure.
there's a book, Liz Wiseman's Multipliers, that's really about that. Really, if you want your group to grow, you have to empower other people and you have to delegate authority. It creates sort of a multiplier effect, hence the name multiplier. And so there was one leader that reported up to him that, within months of this program left. And he left because of a frank conversation between my client and where that guy was just, no, he doesn't want to delegate authority. He's the boss. He became a leader because he knows. And so he doesn't agree with all of this stuff.
Yeah. Right.
And so he was out. And so those are the tough decisions that are made inside of corporations, as we transform towards this world where people have to be able to solve problems. We can't solve all the problems as leaders. We have to hire smart people and give them the authority to do so.
Sure.
Then you actually, it requires a different skill set.
Yeah, and you're hitting on some pretty big points, which I think are related to ego and how it can really hurt an organization. So you mentioned the idea of the control freak, right? And the micromanager, another way to kind of talk about that. And a lot of that kind of behavior, it stems from a big ego. Nobody can do this better than me.
That's right.
And as a consequence, particularly if your business grows, right, it grows past your ability to do it all. And you absolutely, to your earlier point, you need to develop that team around you that you can count on, that are going to do the right kinds of things in the right ways and the right time frame and all that, to continue to help your business grow.
Well, that's right on. And I think that I've got a tip here. People won't be able to do it as well as you. I mean, that you just have to accept that. But good enough is a threshold. It's not a continuum. So in other words, if you're supplying your technical ability, which doesn't necessarily have to be technical, but whatever your expertise is, if you're applying that and your customers are wildly happy, that's beautiful. But getting them above that threshold of being happy versus wildly happy is not necessarily what you need to teach all of your people that work for you, right? It's getting them to happy for sure. But the wildly happy is maybe something that you could still do, or you're maybe only doing that portion. But in order to grow, you actually have to think about it as a threshold, that not everybody's going to be able to do it to your ability who invented whatever it is that you're doing, right?
Right.
And so you have to figure out what that threshold is and allow people to learn, teach them how to get to that threshold, and then don't worry about, what goes beyond that.
Yeah. Do your best, forget the rest, that kind of thing. The problem with this, and I think it's related to the point, when you're operating with a big ego, you're looking for confirmation all the time. You're like the little kid that needs a pat on the head, right?
Yeah.
And basically the big ego makes kind of this strong confirmation bias.
That's right.
And as an impact, that's dangerous for a business, right? I mean, if we're always looking for things that agree with our opinion, our confirmation of our bias, then we're not getting better ideas.
It's also just a mindset. I mean, in the end, you can always find something that will confirm what you believe, right?
Sure.
I was speaking with an entrepreneur the other day, and he wrote me an email yesterday, and he's all like, "Oh, I'm all excited. I talked to this expert in the field, and he validated all of my ideas." and I said, I wrote back to him, and I said, "Well, actually, he just what he said was that smart people think similarly. I go, but only the market will validate your idea. And so, and he was all like, yeah, you're exactly right. And so it's interesting how easily, just are even good, good natured people that aren't like crazy, micromanagers or whatever. We're always kind of seeking that confirmation. And then somebody's like is above our, has succeeded more than we have and says the same thing. Oh my gosh, I must be right. No, we actually both could be wrong. So, I mean, this is
drum roll, please. We both could be wrong.
Right. And so that's the idea of just admitting that you don't know the answer is actually allows you to go on a path for finding the answer, for exploring. Right. And so I talk about in the book this exploration mode and developing, empathy for customers and learning about them and running experiments and trying to find this path forward so we can get that back into the known bucket. And once it's back in the known bucket, we're back onto the execution track.
Well, yeah, I mean, that little bit of vulnerability, right? It just keeps us, I don't know, alive. It sparks our curiosity. It helps us to continue to learn and to refine our craft and do things, maybe new things that we've never done before, and that kind of stuff. I mean, you were talking to me about playing pickleball before we went on today. That was a new sport, right? I mean, so everybody who's playing pickleball now just learned how to play it.
That's right. You go out there and you try to figure out what works, right? I mean, so Jim, that thing is actually what we do as human beings, right? I mean, you look at the babies, they don't know how to walk. Other animals, they can walk right from day one, right? So we don't know how to walk, we don't know how to talk, and so we're actually learning machines, I think. And by the time we graduate our kids from college, we've sort of stolen that from them. We've taken it out of them because now we want to do what they're told by their professors and by their teachers and by their parents and all the rest. And so we need that back because, the pandemic, a bunch of people are running around calling the pandemic the once in a century pandemic. And I'm thinking 20 years in, this ain't the last one. This is not going to be once in a century. We've already gone through 3 major economic downfalls in the first 2 decades of this century, which is extraordinary. So my take is that we're going to have what I call endless disruptions, supply chain issues. Ship gets stuck in a canal and it disrupts global supply chain. Energy grid collapse in Texas. Ransomware attack shuts down a hospital system in San Diego. I mean, these things are ongoing and they're going to ripple across our economy and they're going to ripple across our businesses. And so that means increased uncertainty. And it just means, Jim, that people are required to admit that when they don't know so that they can go figure these things out. And that can be a weekly or a monthly or certainly a quarterly basis. And so you can actually start building into your work what I call these exploration days. And so those are days where we get to be completely vulnerable and we're going to go off and we're going to learn something new that we apply to driving impact in the business. So this isn't fluffy woo-woo stuff. Let's all get along, kumbaya. This is like exploration mode to drive impact on the business.
And vital to your business success.
That's right.
But so hard to do. I mean, you think about leaders, the higher they rise in the organization, they get the inflated ego, they get the bigger office, all that stuff. I don't know. They create an insulated bubble around themselves, right? They get to this place where they've kind of lost touch with their colleagues. They're on the top floor, and there's only one escalator to get to the top, and there's a guard in front of it, right? So not everybody can get there.
Yep.
They lose track of their company culture. They lose track of their clients, and then they die.
Yep.
Those businesses fail.
Yep. I think that there's some people that reach that level because they are aware, they are looking around the world and they want to be a part of that, and they actually want their business to create value in the world, and they want some sort of a legacy, and so those people tend to be open to that sort of exploration thinking. Other businesses still have the founder around and not necessarily in a management role, but still hanging around the company in some regards. Intuit's like that, as a matter of fact. And so Scott Cook, the founder, brings some of that ethos to the business. For the middle managers on their way up, I think that they have to check their egos. I think they have to be able to do this in order to continue to advance. Now, if they're kind of happy where they are and they want to protect their fiefdom, they can do that for a little while longer. But somebody younger and moving faster, I mean, so again, my firm belief in this world, this digital revolution that we're in, those that balance the exploration side of things will succeed better. They'll increase the efficiency of their execution. They'll find new markets. They'll find new ideas that drive growth. And so those are the ones that eventually are going to advance. And so I think that this is one of those things that generational change will have a big influence on that. But if you're a leader now, you're either going to hunker down and hope nobody notices, or you're going to change, and then you can be a leader in driving that change. And so I would prefer the latter.
Well, it seems that we need to strike a balance, right? I mean, and it's probably a delicate one. Research suggests that self-confidence is an important factor in effective leadership, right? So clearly leaders need to have confidence and believe that, that they can get things done and so on. However, overconfident leaders are the ones that run into problems, right? I mean, they've got blind spots. And they can't see that they're making mistakes, or they don't want to hear it. It would seem that those would be the folks that really have to manage and quiet their egos.
Yeah. So I played rugby in college, and I was not by any stretch of the imagination a great rugby player. I'm way too small and I'm too slow, to be honest. And so I played on the B team. I played on the B team, and I was not even the best on the B team, but I was captain of the B team. Well, as captain of the B team, I was I was a leader. It didn't mean I carried the ball the whole time. I mean, the whole point is to pass the ball in rugby. And and so I think that's, it's an analogy that works here. I think that there are times where you need to demonstrate your leadership, and maybe that's through ego in times of crisis, and maybe in times of success, and you're rewarding other people, and you're just out front, inspiring people. I think that there's definitely places where leadership skills that are driven by your ego are required.
Sure.
But so that's the balance that you're talking about, is that when is it that we step back and go, okay, I need to empower others, or I need to admit that I don't know, and so I can go into this exploration mode, and I need to delegate authority because other people might, this team of people over here, and I hired all of those people, and I hired them because they're smart, that maybe if I give them the power to exercise their intelligence and their creativity, they're going to solve the problem better than whatever's up in my head. So
sure. Yeah.
So it's a balance, and there's a skill set involved there, and learning how to apply it. But it's all teachable. It's all doable.
I agree with you.
Yeah. So the first step is just simply go, okay, I buy this. So how do I do it?
Right. Yeah. I mean, to your point, I mean, being courageous enough to set direction, and then being smart enough, if you will, to be able to manage change is really the key to leadership. Set direction, manage change. And that's what you're doing all the time.
Yep.
All the time. And I feel like we've kind of made it more complicated than it needs to be, Well,
I mean, I think that if you've gone to MBA programs, maybe pre-entrepreneur MBA programs, I mean, that you were sort of taught that that's how you manage. You manage people's tasks. And so you're sort of sitting over them and making sure, in this remote world, you're making sure they're on Zoom all day long, and
right.
And you're keeping track of how many tasks they do over some period of time. And to me, that doesn't work anymore. We need to manage outcomes. And so your people need to share with you what's their progress towards achieving the outcome. And to be perfectly honest, Jim, I still struggle with this. I have my people send me weekly updates, and the weekly updates tend to default to being a laundry list of things that they did. And I'm all like, I don't care what you did. I want to know, how close are we to the desired outcome, and where do you need help in achieving the shared outcome?
Sure. Right.
And so it completely changes the conversation.
Absolutely.
I don't want to create a list of things for you to do, and I don't want you to report back to me which one you've done.
Like right on, virtual high five. In my latest book, Indispensable, I get into that, and I actually make that very point. I'm saying, look, we're measuring the wrong stuff.
Yeah.
People are measuring tasks, they're not measuring outcomes. And as a consequence, we've created entire paradigms and models and organization structures and constructs that reinforce an old way of thinking about management leadership, you know, because we have made tasks.
We're right there together, Jim. No doubt
Yeah, I
about
mean,
it.
you
Yeah.
know, the 40-hour work week, right? Why is that? Because I need people in the office 9 to 5. I've got to watch them, you know.
Right.
And now, and maybe this is an opportunity that arises from the world we live in at the moment, but now we have this opportunity to recognize that actually people can get stuff done in other ways. They can do it remotely. They don't actually have to physically be in that same space with me to get to be effective.
Well,
But we've
with the
got to measure outcomes. To your point,
yep.
that's the key measurement.
Well, and the crazy thing about that, Jim, is how much time that frees up for the manager, right?
Right.
It's the leadership. The leader suddenly gets to be not just fighting fires, not sort of looking over the shoulder of all their people all the time. They get to be proactive rather than reactive. They get to be more strategic. And if you want
Yeah.
to move up in your company and you can demonstrate your strategic chops and you have time to do that, that's how you're gonna that's how you're
Powerful.
going to advance.
Hey, let me shift gears a little bit. I want your take on this scenario.
Okay.
So Brant, I'm going to ask you to listen carefully, okay?
Okay.
I am a CEO. I have 900 people on a Zoom call. And I say, if you're on this call, you're part of the unlucky group that's being laid off. Your employment here is terminated effective immediately. Now, of course, I'm referencing, you know, Better.com CEO Vishal Garg, and he laid off 10% or so of his workforce with a Zoom call. Is this hubris at work? What do you think? Definitely a blunder, right? He's come back, he's apologized, but
Yeah, I don't even know
how
how.
did it get there? Is my
Well,
question.
I actually think there's a lot of factors in there, and I'm even going to go back to SoftBank, which has had sort of multiple IPOs now with companies where the leaders act
Yeah,
strangely, but certainly dubiously. And I think that in this culture right now, we're propping up tech giant CEOs as if they are these savants, they're these geniuses, Bezos and Zuckerberg and Elon Musk. And so I think that we're in this culture right now where we prop these CEOs up on these pedestals, often when they're quite young, and there's so many factors that led to their success, and especially how big these companies have gotten. And a lot of it, I'd even garner to say most of it is not because of some sort of genius that they have.
right.
And yet, I liken it, Jim, to the Texas football quarterback that gets away with all sorts of bad behavior because for that small town, the high school quarterback is elevated onto this pedestal. They don't actually learn how to have interpersonal skills and how to have empathy and how to, follow the law even. And so I think that's what we're doing with these tech gurus.
Follow the law.
Yeah.
But I agree with you, man. I mean, the thing that's well, let's go back to, I don't know. I'm gonna actually place blame on some of this. Okay, I'm gonna go all the way back to the early '90s to McKinsey and their whole war for talent. And the basic premise in those things that they were producing, that the white papers and the books and all that, was that just hire really smart people, the most intelligent people you can have. Don't give them much guidance, just empower them, let them go do stuff. Well, what happens? Let's go to Enron, happens next.
Yep.
Okay. McKinsey Partners running Enron. What do? They hire all these bright people from top-notch B schools, very little experience. They run the company into the ground, and they do all kinds of crazy things along the way to make money. And they look incredibly, initially, and then all of a sudden, it's unveiled. It's all, a game. And it was, in my mind, an example of hubris, right? We're so smart, we can't fail.
Yep. Yeah,
and it carries on today in the examples you threw out. And we make these guys into rock stars.
Yep.
We've got Elon Musk hosting Saturday Night Live. you
Yeah,
know?
embarrassingly even. I mean, it's
Right.
I
Exactly.
totally agree with that, and it's sort of not a surprise, not to bash McKinsey, but
Yeah. I don't wanna do
it,
that either.
it even well, no, I'm just saying that it is part of the problem, and the profits that they're reaping off of that model is just extraordinary and bad. And of course, they've run into quite a few issues themselves recently because of that
Mm,
same hubris.
right.
And I think that in the digital age, uh, it's even easier to really act unethically. Not that you're necessarily intentionally doing it, but we send all of the stuff out to our customers via digital platforms. We're not in touch with the customers anymore. We're not really learning about them. We're not engaged with their behavior, and so it's super easy for things to run amok, and we don't have the checks and balances working inside the company um, to manage that behavior. Looks like I've lost you, Jim. The question is it me or you? So it's just me here. I imagine Jim is on his way back in. But so it's let me just say I think the toughest part about this idea of stepping back ego is knowing how to apply it inside of your business. And so, like Jim and I were talking about, there's times where you need to demonstrate it and times where you need to step back. And so, I guess I would challenge people to figure out, where is their uncertainty? Like, what keeps you up at night in terms of the business? Uh, where do you have doubts that you are willing to admit yourself? And you can assign removing that doubt, or uh, solving for that uncertainty becomes the mission, and you assign that mission to a team. So you create a team that has the skills to address that particular mission, and give that team the authority and the resources they need to accomplish that mission, and give them the metrics on how together you will measure the success, measure the desired outcome. And so you can start by taking something, that's relatively low hanging fruit, low risk, but you start building this trust. You're teaching these new skills to the team members so that they know how to act when they are empowered. And then from there, they are demonstrating that they have the ability to do so. And maybe it's a little bit of training that can go on there in terms of design thinking or developing empathy or running experiments or those type of things. And over time, you can see how teams that are empowered to take out these uncertainties actually increases productivity. It actually makes performance better. And that's what really sort of opens the gates that, hey, listen, I can delegate this authority to then sort of even some of the bigger elements that we're trying to accomplish. So things like, where does growth come from 2 or 3 years down the road? Or what's a new market opportunity? Or what's a new product or service? Some of these bigger questions can actually be solved in the same sort of way. So I believe, are at time, and I don't want to go crazy over, and I have no idea what Jim's going to do with all of this. But so I am going to sign off from the live and thank everybody for watching. And we'll see what Jim has to say about all of this. But I appreciate Jim having me. And if you want to reach out to me, I'm Brant Cooper on all social media, and brant@brantcooper.com is my email. I respond to all of that. And so I look forward to hearing from you all, and have a great day.
Hey, everybody. We ran into some technical difficulties here. Sorry about that. I just want to make reference to the fact that we will do what we can to get the show out to you. This was the last episode of our season. Brant Cooper did an incredible job with me today. I want to thank him directly. And I want to let you know that we'll be back in late January with another episode of the Indispensable Conversation. Until then, enjoy the holidays and time with the family. And thanks for tuning in.